There's something about the timing of everything lately that feels too coordinated to ignore. Last week, many dominoes fell into place at the same time. The massive Epstein file dump, a historic crash in gold and silver, and an arbitrage anomaly between metals markets that rattled the value of the US dollar. But the real reset wasn't happening in front of our faces. It was unfolding behind the curtain inside the dollar system itself. Financial collapse is the doorway into the next phase of this engineered descent. The system we've lived under isn't failing, it's being retired and sabotaged by design, so that a new beast can rise from its ashes. The mainstream narrative will always offer a palatable lie. They'll say the push for a weaker dollar is all about boosting exports, reshoring manufacturing, and protecting the US from oil realignments. You'll hear endless talking points about the decline of the petrodollar, the rise of BRICS, and the supposed threat of de-dollarization. But these are distractions. The truth is, this has nothing to do with oil. Oil isn't scarce. It's not the global chess piece they make it out to be. And it never was. Wars aren't fought over just oil. They're fought over control. The dollar isn't being devalued because of external threats. It's being systematically collapsed by the very people who benefit most from that collapse. Meanwhile, foreign holders of US debt like China, Japan, and Gulf states have been quietly dumping treasuries. China sold $53 billion in US bonds in 2023. Japan has trimmed nearly $100 billion since 2021. The treasury is functionally bankrupt. To raise quick cash, they've been offloading Fed bonds at a frantic pace, then funneling that money straight into the stock market. This artificial pump inflates asset prices, spikes the money supply, and triggers runaway inflation. It's not about saving the economy, it's about keeping the illusion alive long enough to extract what's left. Rising markets give the false impression of prosperity, but in reality, they concentrate wealth at the top while eroding the purchasing power of everyone else. And this is by design. A devalued currency keeps the masses in survival mode, desperate, compliant, and easier to control. And though they're pretending to stabilize the dollar by shrinking supply, it's only to buy time until their digital replacement and biometric control system is fully ready to be ushered in. These aren't solutions, they're stall tactics, temporary band-aids on a bleeding corpse of a system they already planned to bury. Because once fiat fails, they gain something even greater than reserve currency status, which is programmable control over your life. The end goal was never about energy. It was always about energy consumption quotas, carbon tracking, smart grid compliance, and behavioral economics. Control through currency. The central banks don't want gold-backed money. The hoarding of physical gold is just hedging. Gold and silver can't be printed, tracked, or controlled. Fiat gave them narrative power, but crypto, especially central bank digital currencies, give them absolute power. They can program what you buy, where you go, and what's allowed. So while the headlines point to trade balance and global realignment, the truth is that the dollar is dying because the system that runs it wants it dead. And when it finally flatlines, the biometric chains of CBDCs will already be waiting. They don't know how smoothly the transition will be, but one thing that's certain is retail isn't moving metals, institutions are. Billionaires are. The same people who laughed at gold for a decade are now quietly draining the vaults. Last Friday, we saw the biggest precious metals crash in recorded history. It was triggered by highly leveraged derivatives in the COMEX market, paper contracts pretending to represent real metal. Many algorithms couldn't even buy the dip due to so-called technical issues. It was rigged from the top. Why? To make it look like Kevin Warsh, the newly announced Fed puppet, is the dollar's savior. And right on cue, they crashed gold to reinforce this illusion. It was theater, monetary manipulation disguised as market response. Let's not forget, there are no reserves. This is a Ponzi scheme, one that Max Azzarillo literally set himself on fire, trying to warn us about. I made a whole video on his manifesto where he explains their kleptocracy plans. Though every ounce of gold in COMEX or LBMA is sold dozens, if not hundreds of times over. They call them derivatives, but they're just digital IOUs backed by nothing but trust. They print paper gold the same way they print dollars, from thin air backed by nothing, and with no intention of delivery. If everyone holding these fake metals tried to redeem them at once, the system would collapse in seconds. They couldn't deliver 1% of the physical, not even close. But the illusion is sustained by fraud, leverage, and confidence. Just like the fiat system, it's modeled after. That's why the elites are rapidly converting their paper holdings into physical while the price is still manipulated. They're draining the vaults while the public still believes in the illusion. And when the collapse hits, when fiat finally dies and the system reboots, there will be no redemption, no access, just a closed window and a message that says, "You should have asked sooner." Warsh's wife is the heir to the Estee Lauder fortune. Her father, Ronald Lauder, is a Bilderberg insider, Rothschild affiliate, Rockefeller loyalist, and one of the most powerful Zionist lobbyists on earth. His name is tied to digital ID rollouts, surveillance legislation, and military funding.
All world leaders, all politicians must lead in this effort. Words are not enough. Political speeches are not enough. Laws must be passed, severe, tough, real laws that will put these hate mongers away in prison for a long time.
Warsh isn't here to save the dollar. He's here to collapse it on schedule and usher in the next phase. Biometric slavery. Fiat is dead, but before they bury it, they're making sure every ounce of profit, every drop of control is wrung from the corpse. And that's what the Genius Act is about. And it is anything but genius. This legislation allows stablecoins to represent fiat currency, but in reality they're just simulation money, tokens for bonds, government debt, and surveillance. Retirement funds are being forcibly converted into digital dollars. These fake e-dollars go to you. The real money goes to the banks, which they use up to buy gold and escape the system they're setting on fire. Are you getting how this works yet? And if or when the system implodes, the risk is on you, not them. The holders of these coins, which is the public, absorbs the sovereign debt risk. That means if hyperinflation hits, your retirement vanishes. The same blueprint was used in Weimar Germany: hyperinflation, cultural decay, sexual perversion, moral collapse, scapegoating, and then the boot. The only difference is they won't allow another populist uprising this time. They learned their lesson. No new system to take over, just the beast system. Pre-programmed, biometrically enforced, and applauded by the very people it's devouring. And that brings us to the final trap. If you still think 15-minute smart cities are a tinfoil theory, take a good look at Oxford. These are one of the pilot programs, and they're already here. The cameras track you, the AI finds you, the compliance is automated, and if you live outside the zone, you only get 25 free passes to enter. No checkpoints, no guards, just mass surveillance and algorithmic tyranny. Every flow camera in the US is part of this rollout, every Palantir government database, every license plate scan, every public safety facial recognition upgrade. They're building the infrastructure for geofenced obedience. The data centers are finished, the networks are in place. All they need is the final economic collapse to flip the switch. And unfortunately, they're almost there. They've made sure you won't own anything, you won't afford a home. Trump himself said the older generation would be the last generation to buy homes at 3 times the salary. Now, it's 15 times. And that doesn't include the inflation in utilities, insurance, and taxes they've baked in. They're not trying to help, they're trying to trap, because if you can't live independently, you rely on them. And once you're fully dependent, resistance becomes impossible. Trump wants a weak dollar, not because it helps America, but because it helps consolidate global power during the reset. He prints money to pump the stock market to inflate the assets of his billionaire friends, not the American people. Meanwhile, $15 trillion was vaporized in the past week, not lost, deleted. A manipulated burn to reduce the money supply and buy time before Fiat's final breath. And while they distract you with culture wars, Epstein files, and digital bread and circuses, the true war is already underway. The war to force you into their digital prison.